Authors Press.
Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. And on the line with us today, we have Joseph Albert Gorski. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Government 2.0. Check into authorspress.com, where it's available for purchase there. And I will say, if you haven't figured it out yet, Joe is brought to our network by Authors Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact Authors Press. And you can find out more information on them at authorspress.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Joe, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction. Thank you for being a guest. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to the education that I'm going to receive. And I know that this is a fictional narrative, but even fictional narratives, especially with yours, based upon realistic circumstances, has so much education to be received. Now, before we jump into the book, Joe, let's hold off slightly. Start by articulating to our listening audience a little bit more about yourself, please.
Okay, well, I'm a college graduate. I've lived mostly in New Jersey, then Arizona, and now I'm in Texas. I have married with a pretty big family and some grandkids. But I've always been passionate about politics, economics, right? Going from when I was like in my late teens, I was always passionate about that. I always really got bothered by people having petty arguments about things when I could tell that these are two people that have, so much in common, and then they're arguing. Like, I can remember when I was a teenager, I wrote a letter to the editor to Motor Trend magazine, because people, back in the late 70s, you'd hear people arguing what's a better car, a Ford or a Chevy, and I just got so tired of hearing about that stuff. I said, why can't we just all agree that there's some good qualities to both of them and move on from there? Because obviously you're a car enthusiast, you're both car enthusiasts, and just talk about that. You don't have to say all kinds of insults about the other company. Just let's move on, So anyway, that just is something I remembered. And then in politics, I see the same thing. We have to insult the other side, and, petty, cheap shots. But if those two people got together in a bar and they were just talking to each other, they'd probably be buddies. And then, until the point they hear, oh, you're the other party, or you're liberal or conservative, but yet probably just bringing up normal conversation, normal things of life, there'd probably be like 80% agreement. And until the point where you say, oh, I'm part of this team or that team, Same thing with sports, too. Growing up in the New York area, arguments about Mets and Yankees, and one group hates the other group. I mean, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. This is all like caveman stuff. We got to move on from that now. So that's one of my big themes of my life, really, is let's move on from that petty stuff. Let's work together. So that's it.
Listen, Joe, I am in full agreement. And being a New England boy myself, listen, we would hear that all the time. You bring up the Yankees. Well, I'm not a baseball fan, but the Yankees and the Red Sox, that's all I ever heard about growing up. It's just kind of the way it always was. But I am in full agreement. And listen, you can have your point of view, I can have mine, but we can still have a conversation. And I think that's
right.
A lot of times where we kind of get derailed. Now, Joe, without further ado, Government 2.0. Tell us a little bit more about your book. Okay,
well, basically, it's not like one government replaces another, but we are in a transition right now from one form of government to another, and I believe that the change will come from the outside. I don't really expect Washington, D.C. to suddenly say, hey, we're going to reform ourselves and change the way we do things. I don't expect the banking system to say, hey, we're going to change the way we do things. Change is going to come from the outside, and it's going to force them to change, or they'll become less and less relevant. So that's basically what Government 2.0 is. We're in the age now when almost everybody around the world has a communication device. We can freely get, news quickly from many different sources. And, if we think something's unreliable, we could check out another source. It's not like you just have a couple news bureaus like in the old days and have to trust what their version of the news is or what they want to tell you, not tell you. So that's one positive. The other positive is the last decade or so, we have had the creation of like Bitcoin and now many other thousands of coins, and they're trying to solve financial problems. They're trying to, like Bitcoin, for example, they have a very limited supply and it's never going to increase, so they don't have inflation, they have deflation. It only goes up in value over time. I mean, it has its ups and downs from month to month, but it's basically just been increasing in value over the years. Whereas the currency just keeps depreciating. That's the way things work with the government and debt. They want it to depreciate to cover the debt payments. So that's the other facet of the change in government. New money system, better communication between individuals, and I think there's just more of a spirit in the world where people realize we need to work together to get things done. And so that's basically Government 2.0 in a nutshell.
Joe, I'm curious. Let's go a little bit more in depth with the book. So, as I stated when we first started this interview, it's almost a cautionary tale, right? So we're discussing analyzing things from a current standpoint. By current, I mean the current political climate and governmental climate, and where we can go if things continue to follow along this line. Now, your book, is it comprised of fictional characters that are living in a quote-unquote contemporary world similar to what we are going through now and what their world looks like in this Government 2.0? Or talk to us a little bit more in depth with that.
Okay, well, one thing I made a point of doing is very carefully not putting too many real-life people in here, because once you mention this president or that president, half the people want to tune you out. Oh, he's this, he's that. So I'm not going to talk about presidents in there. That might already turn half the people off. So basically, if I do give a quote from a real-life person in the book, it's just a quote that goes beyond politics. It's like they've just made a profound statement about how things really are. Like one time in the book, I quoted the senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin, and he said something to the effect, after the financial crisis in 2008, he says, in a nutshell, he said, the banks run this place. He's talking about Washington, D.C. So I quoted him, not because he's a Democrat or Republican or independent. He happens to be Democrat, but that's not why I quoted him. That quote that came out of his mouth is beyond politics. It's stating how things really are. So in my book, I refrain from anything that would be construed as partisan or political, like for one side or the other. So I very sparingly use some quotes that I think would be just really helpful to expound on what I'm saying. Like I said, that's one example. I had something in the book. I think I had a quote about Henry Ford. He was the inventor of the Model T and the assembly line and all that stuff. He said, if America knew about the banks and how bad. Well, let me see if I can read his quote. It's well enough that the people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. So that's part of the mission of my book, too, is to educate people about the banking system, that this is a system that creates money out of thin air, and they make profit from this nothing, really. And the Federal Reserve happens to be the most profitable business there is in the world. I just read that last week from David Stockman, the former budget director for Ronald Reagan. He says that if you take the top 20 corporations and add them up, they don't add up to the money that the Federal Reserve Bank makes in profit each year. So it's incredible.
Absolutely. Guys, again, here in the line with Joseph Albert Gorski, We're discussing his fantastic book, Government 2.0, available for purchase directly through authorspress.com. Now, Joe, I'm curious, what type of research, now I know you've already started to go into it and you started to give a few examples, but what type of research did you do in preparation for this book?
Well, really, it's a lifetime of preparation in one sense, but in particular, the last decade and a half, I've been really keeping up on political, economic news. I get newsletters on a daily basis and read them, and these are business-type newsletters. They always stress we're not trying to pick a partisan fight here. We're not going Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. We're just stating some economic realities, and that's they try to come from that point of view, and that's what I appreciate, because I just don't like it when you know the person that's talking to you has an agenda. So I try to find something where if there's no agenda, they're just trying to analyze what's going on in the world and tell you. So it's most business stuff relates to politics and people. So everything is all related. So you get a lot of insights from that.
Fantastic. And Joe, as we start to wind down now, because I know there's so much information that we can cover, but I'm curious, what are you hoping to see people do or take from this book?
What I'm hoping for people to do is to try to work together with your neighbor, your politician, or whatever. Don't just shut down the other person. Try to listen to them. Let's find out what we can do in common, because, like let's say with the highway infrastructure thing that they had going on, there's all kinds of debate about it, but they kind of had to narrow it down to some things. Well, this is what we both agree on. So then they got something done, but it's still in the works anyway. But that's what we need to do, is just work together, see what we can come up with that we have in common, and move on from there, and not try to jam some hyper partisan thing down somebody's throat or whatever. We got to work together and think about our neighbor, have empathy for our neighbor. You see your neighbor every day. He's going through stuff. You're going through stuff. Just see him as just like he's you. We're all part of the human race. Don't say, well, that guy looks like he's from another country or another race. You just say he's like me. He's going through the same kind of challenges as me. Let's be nice to each other. Let's work together. That's basically my message.
And like I said, what a great message that it is, because this is something, again, as I stated when we first started this interview, this is what we are all about here at People of Distinction. It's all about that unity amongst our human family, regardless of ethnic background, financial background, gender. It doesn't matter. We are all connected, and the only way we're going to advance is by coming together. Because when we remain as individuals, we can only get so far. So it's through that teamwork, it's through that understanding, that mutual respect, that we can really get to the points of achievement that we're trying to accomplish. Joe, last question as we go out. Being an artist myself, and I'm in a different medium, I'm an actor and a filmmaker here in Los Angeles, but being an artist and having this platform, I always feel almost obligated, right? And I don't want to say obligated because it has a negative connotation, because I love doing it. But I feel a sense of obligation to almost pay it forward to other artists out there listening in, and specifically with regards to this conversation, to other authors, to other writers out there listening in. Now, Joe, you're someone that has written the book. You've put the words to the page, you've comprised the story, but you've also taken it a step further and gone through the gauntlet of getting the book published, which anybody that has gone through the process understands that writing the book is only half the battle. Getting it published is an endeavor all in its own. So I'd love to pick your brain, Joe, for any new writers out there listening in. What words of wisdom would you be able to relay to them?
That's an excellent question. I actually heard another author saying that writing the book is only 1% and 99% is the promotion of the book. so anyway, but I'm not going to argue about that point. But what I learned is that anybody can get a self-published book for a few $100s or whatever, but you have to do the promotional work yourself. You have to get do things like this, a radio interview, try to get in with a magazine, try to anything you could think of to get the word out about your book. And then ultimately the goal is to get with a traditional publisher who will handle a lot of this stuff, and then they could send you out on a book tour or whatever they need you to do to promote the book. But there's not much respect for the self-published author, unfortunately. So like you said, I really had to go through a gauntlet just to get to this point. Oh yeah, I got professional book reviews done. That's another way to get some respect. Is I had several book reviews done professionally, which they have to go by certain standards and guidelines. So it's supposed to be unbiased, and I had some excellent reviews, and they'll be inside the book at somewhere in the back, I think, of the book. But anyway, there's a lot to the process of getting published. Let's put it that way. Self-published, easy. Getting with a traditional publisher is really, really, really hard. Unless you're already a celebrity and they say, well, we'll publish your memoirs and your name's already out there. But when you're an unknown author, extremely, extremely hard. And just be prepared that don't fall in for any scams that say, we'll get your book published and it'll be nice and easy and you'll make money, and that's not the case.
Absolutely. Joe, I love what you're saying, right? Because you pointed out a lot of things, but it all revolves around the importance of marketing. Marketing is very difficult in and of itself. It takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And I love that you didn't shy away from the importance of that, because having a publishing company, even if you had a traditional one that did a lot of it for you, the onus still falls on you as the writer to continue with everything that you can add to it, right? Everything else, all the little work, all the little pieces of work that you're willing to put in is going to go a long way. That doesn't mean you shy away from it. You just have to acknowledge and understand the road ahead. Guys, listen, you know what you have to do. A lot more can be said, but nothing else is going to be. AuthorsPress.com are the places you have to go. Government 2.0 is the book you have to purchase. And Joseph Albert Gorski is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves. This book is jam-packed with gems. Again, it's a cautionary tale. Be open, be mindful, recognize what is happening around us. At the end of the day, there's a lot of greed in the system, and our current government, whether it's the left or the right, it doesn't matter. Money has been infused into the system, and there is definitely some things that are happening that aren't for the benefit of the public at large. But what's great about it when we're talking about the government is, guys, we elect the officials that are put in the office. So if we find that we elect the wrong person, well, that's why voting is so important. And being able to have the conversation with our fellow citizens to come to an agreement, to come to a mutual understanding, is how we're going to be able to make sure that we're finding the benefit for everyone involved, not just the select few elites. Joe, thank you very much, man, once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction. It was truly a pleasure having you on.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Cole. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.